President Trump, for his part, is heading to the so-called Winter White House in Florida later on today as he calls on Congress to get back to work on its COVID-19 relief package. Yeah, back to work. You thought it was a done deal. He was expected to sign the $900 billion bipartisan bill and release the much-needed aid, but the president is now taking aim at the $600 stimulus check, calling them ridiculous, the checks plural, ridiculously low. It's worth noting that the $600 proposal for those checks actually came from his own Treasury Secretary earlier this month. The bill passed both chambers of Congress with overwhelming support, meaning a potential veto may only slow down distribution of the funds, not sink the entire package. Chip Reid has the latest.
It really is a disgrace.
In a surprise move, President Trump last night demanded that Congress revise the $900 billion COVID relief legislation that was passed just days ago.
I'm asking Congress to amend this bill and increase the ridiculously low $600 to $2,000 or $4,000 for a couple.
It was Republicans, not Democrats, who were mostly opposed to higher stimulus payments. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi tweeted last night, "At last, the president has agreed to $2,000. Democrats are ready to bring this to the floor this week by unanimous consent." The president also railed against what he said were unrelated provisions in the legislation.
$505 million to Belize, Costa Rica, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, Nicaragua, and Panama.
Most of those provisions were in a separate government funding bill passed jointly with the COVID relief legislation. The president's announcement was met with concerns from both sides of the aisle. Republican Senator Lindsey Graham tweeted, "The COVID-19 package, while imperfect, will save jobs and lives," while Democrat Mark Warner asked, "Does the president realize that unemployment benefits expire the day after Christmas?"
We won by a landslide.
The president also released a second video last night in which he railed against the election results and brought up unfounded claims of fraud. Both of the president's videos were posted just minutes after the White House announced a controversial wave of pardons. Among them, George Papadopoulos, a Trump 2016 campaign advisor who was convicted of lying to authorities as part of an investigation into Russian election interference, and Alex van der Zwaan, a lawyer also convicted of lying during the Russia probe.
People who lied to cover up for themselves or for the president, they get a pardon. It's just another body blow against the rule of law in this country.
The president also granted clemency to 3 former Republican congressmen, Duncan Hunter, Chris Collins, and Steve Stockman, all of whom were convicted of separate financial crimes.
He is trying to burn the House of Justice down on his way out the door.
All right, so Chip Reid is joining me now from the White House. So Chip, with that announcement, there were pardons, there were sort of commutations, there were reducing sentences, there was sort of a lot in there. There certainly were people who had been convicted of non-violent drug offenses that benefited from what the president had to say yesterday. And there's some white-collar criminals. You point out there were some people who have some connections to the president, people who supported his presidential bid early on. Also included in the pardons were people connected to the infamous Blackwater firm. Remind us what happened in that case.
Well, it was a very chaotic time in Iraq in 2007, and there were quite a few private security firms over there to keep American diplomats and others safe. And there was a convoy with Blackwater guards escorting some U.S. embassy personnel through Nisour Square in Baghdad, a major square, which is always very crowded and a lot of confusion. And on this day, it was particularly chaotic. As some witnesses put it, what happened was that one of the Blackwater guards, for whatever reason, shot the driver of a car, that's probably the car you're looking at right there, in the head, and that car then started moving erratically. Other guards didn't understand why it was moving erratically. They thought perhaps it was another in a long series of car bombs, and so they opened fire. Just an absolutely chaotic situation. You had these Blackwater guards firing on Iraqi police who were firing on them, who thought the other side had started. It was just an absolute chaotic mess. But over many years of prosecution, the courts finally concluded that these 4 Blackwater guards had acted criminally. One was sentenced to life in prison, the others to long terms. And keep in mind that Eric Prince, a good friend of the president, founded the Blackwater firm, and it's believed that he's been lobbying on this. He is the brother of Betsy DeVos, who is the education secretary. So one more example of people who are involved in pardons who are close to the president politically or personally.
So unsurprisingly, Democrats were pretty quick to criticize President Trump's pardons. We saw some of that in your story. Are they much different than what we've seen previous presidents do? Previous presidents also pardon people they know, right?
Absolutely. Certainly, Bill Clinton was accused of that, and just about every president has been. And we're going to have to take some time to really look at the statistics here, but I think there is a real strong sense, certainly Democrats believe, that this president has gone far beyond what other presidents have done in the percentage of the people he has pardoned who are close to him politically or personally. One Harvard law professor put together a list and concluded that 88% of the people, more than 50 people so far who have been pardoned by President Trump, were close to him politically or personally, and that would certainly by far exceed what other presidents have done.
So now let's go back to this COVID-19 relief package. I'm pretty sure politicians on both sides of the aisle were pretty shocked when they heard the president, say that he may not sign this bill, and especially when he floated the idea of $2,000, which is what Nancy Pelosi had tried to introduce as well. The Treasury Secretary Stephen Mnuchin, he's a member of the president's administration. It was his idea to propose the $600 stimulus checks earlier in the month. So what's going on with the president's objections, and how involved was he in the negotiations through the final stages of this bill?
He was almost completely absent from the negotiations. He sent a tweet at one point saying, "Congress, get it done, and I want more money for the stimulus payments." But he did not get involved personally in the lobbying or the negotiations, and now he's acting like he's surprised that it's only $600, which, as you stated, was the administration's position from the Secretary of the Treasury. So it's in some ways a great mystery why he would suddenly be doing this after the bill has been passed overwhelmingly by both houses. But I think there's a sense here in Washington that it's basically the president shouting out, "I'm still relevant, don't take me for granted, I can still bring chaos to the process here," and that is what he has done in this case.
Yeah, the chaos may be holding up badly needed money that many people were hoping, and not to mention a moratorium on evictions and all sorts of things that's in that very, very 6,000-page document, very large document. Chip Reid, thank you so much.
You bet.